Okay, so we're going to start with the market is like a seesaw. Pretty simple, right? And I'm going to go right to the whiteboard. And first little drawing, could you be my mouse, please? The first drawing that I want to share with you is you'll find this on page 140 of Shift, is when you're in a market where there's less inventory and more buyers, low inventory, lots of buyers, low inventory, lots of buyers, prices are going up. Simple. Now, as the market shifts to more inventory and fewer buyers, then the market starts to shift and you start to see the prices come down. Now, notice I didn't say, Aaron, can you flip the lights for me so we can get these can lights off and the other ones on? I didn't say that when you shift from a seller's market, nope.
Yeah, the backwards.
That's it. It didn't say when you shift from a seller's market to a buyer's market, prices start to fall, because they fall before that happens. Make sure you hear that. They fall as soon as the market starts to shift. And has the market started to shift? Say yes, long time ago. That happened several months ago. We're in this particular market right now. It's important for you to know that, because your sellers don't, other real estate agents don't. They're not teaching this in every office. And most people believe that we're still in this market. So if the last property sold that's comparable to yours sold at 565, then it makes sense that 575 would be a great price. If you didn't realize that we're in a market where there is fewer buyers and more inventory. All right. Here's what Gary has to say. The direction in which a market is going and the speed at which it is moving determines pricing strategies. It didn't say it determines price, it determines pricing strategies. And you've heard me say this before many, many times. Our goal as real estate agents is not to determine what the right price is. That's easy. Our goal is to determine what the right strategy is in order to get your home sold in 30 days so that you could be in Atlanta by September in order to start your new job. If the price doesn't match the direction of the market is moving, okay? Prices are either increasing or they're flatlined or they're decreasing. If the price doesn't match the direction of the market, then buyers will move on and never give it a second thought. Remember that when the seller says to you, a buyer can always make an offer, seller script school, or we can always lower our price, seller script school. Remember that that seller might not have an opportunity later to lower the price in order to attract the right buyer, or maybe they don't get the offer in order to sell their home. Here's a good response to a buyer can always make an offer. My response would be maybe, only if they see your home. And Juanita, if we listed your home at 575 and you got an offer for cash closing in 30 days, in the first 30 days, and it's closing in 2 weeks cash, and the offer is 565, what would you do? You'd sell your home. Here's my concern for you. You may never get that chance because you might not get that offer. If there's a property on the market that's comparable to yours and priced better, if you are the buyer, which home are you making an offer on? The better priced property. Of course you are. Well, the buyers who are shopping for homes like yours are just like yours. Now, the other graph that I want to share with you is, and I'm going to draw this right at the kitchen table. I'm going to pull out a legal pad. Zig Ziglar called it a thinking pad. And I'm simply going to have a conversation around market value. Now, the way we're going to get to this conversation is we're going to look at all of the properties that have sold in your neighborhood. Script. Noah, I brought everything with me. Now, some of these homes are going to be comparable, some aren't. And the ones that aren't comparable, we're just going to push to the side. Now, remember from our conversation last week, what we're looking for when we're determining whether or not a property is comparable is location, not just same neighborhood. And that's critically important. We're never going to go outside the neighborhood unless we can't find 2 or 3 properties that sold that are comparable to yours. The other part of location is if you back to a lake, I'm looking for another home that backs to a lake. If you back to a lake, I'm not going to look at a property that backs to a busy street. It's not comparable. The other thing we're looking at is size. And my rule that I use is the same one that most appraisers use, which is plus minus 10%, which means if your home, the subject property is 3,000 square foot, we're looking between 2,700 square foot and 3,300 square foot. So as we're going through the comparables, if I come across a property that's 4,000 square foot, Diane, this property is not comparable, so we're going to push it off to the side. Script, write it down. Now we're looking for 2 or 3 properties that are as close to being comparable to your home that sold in the last 6 months. The other thing that goes into determining comparable is condition. And then the fourth is amenities. In other words, if your subject property has a pool, I'm looking for comparable properties that have a pool. If it doesn't have a pool, I'm looking for comparable properties that don't have a pool. And then not included in that list of 4 items is we're going to take into consideration when that property sold. In other words, a property that sold in the last 30 days is going to get a lot more weight than a property that sold 6 months ago. Everybody follow me so far? Now, if the property comps at 565, in other words, market value, and we're in a stable market, market value is going to look pretty much like this. It's a flat line. Now, it might start to drop depending on what the market does, but for the most part, it's staying pretty stable. And if I want to list my home at 575, even though it comps at 565, because a buyer can always make an offer, or I can always lower my price. Here's what typically happens. I'm going to move because the lighting is weird. Hold on one second. All right, a little better. Here's what typically happens. We're going to lower the price somewhere around 90 days. And what happens there is the seller will lower the price to what market value was on day 1. And somewhere about 90, 120 days out, we're going to drop the price again. Now, this red line, that represents interest. That's people who are looking at your home. And your window of opportunity is the first 30 days. The goal is to be in the market in the first 30 days, to be fishing with our bait in the water where the fish are in the first 30 days. As interest starts to drop and somewhere around 120 days out, we lower the price to 550. It's still not getting the activity that it would have gotten because interest is way down here. Now, a buyer comes in, they love your home. And the first question they ask is, how long has it been on the market? Real estate agent says 120 days. The next question they ask is, can I get a deal? And they come in with an offer of $525,000. Now, as a seller, are you more motivated? Let's say desperate. Are you more motivated / more desperate, Nick, at 120 days, or are you more motivated at 30 days? Say it loud so the court reporter can hear you. 120 days. Thank you. Now, as a seller, is your negotiating position stronger at 30 days, or is it at 120 days? 30 days. Who has the advantage, buyer or seller, at 30 days? Seller. Who has the advantage, buyer or seller, at 120 days? Buyer. So what typically happens, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in my experience, is that homeowner will end up selling their home for $525,000. Now, they're not happy, and they're usually not happy with me. and they lost $40,000. That's the difference between 565 and 525. 525 and 565, they lost $40,000 plus they have an additional 90 days of holding costs. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, interest fees, HOA fees. If their holding cost is $3,000, they lost another $9,000. So they lost $49,000 trying to make an extra $10,000. Now, what would I do? In this situation, I want to price ahead of the market, not at the market. At the market might work, but then again, it might not. So I want to price where the market is going. My suggested list price to this seller would be $550. Now watch this. If you could sell your home for $550,000 in 30 days, or $525 in 120 days, which would you choose? $550 in 30 days, right? And the strategy in order to get that done is to start at $550,000. Now remember, sellers go to script school too, and one of the scripts they're going to use is that doesn't leave room for negotiation. Your response to that doesn't leave room for negotiation is when you price for negotiation, negotiation is what you get. In other words, if you price allowing room for buyers to offer you less, you're going to get less. When you price based on where you expect to sell, 9 out of 10 times in this market, you're going to get full price. You might even get more because you might create a bidding war and now buyers are bidding the price up. In other words, if you really want 565, start at 550 and you might sell for 565 because you got multiple offers. Now, here's what Gary has to say. Fair market value is driven by what buyers will pay for perceived worth. Fair market value is what buyers will pay for perceived worth. Notice I didn't say it's based on what the seller wants or what the seller needs. Seller script. I need 575. I want 575 because I just spent $40,000 updating my kitchen a year ago. Now, the question that I would ask that seller is when you made that improvement, when you spent the $40,000 updating your kitchen, did you know you were going to be selling a year from now? 9 out of 10 times you're going to hear, no, I didn't. And if you could have the $40,000 back today, or you could still have the updated kitchen, which would you choose? Most of the time you're going to hear I take $40,000. And my response to that is, so would the buyer. You should have major ahas around that. Now, 3 reasons why homeowners make improvements to their properties. Please write this down. Number 1 is for personal enjoyment. In other words, I spent $40,000 on my kitchen. Now I've got this beautiful kitchen that I enjoy a lot more than that kitchen from the 1970s with the avocado appliances. Okay. The second reason we make improvements is to increase the value. Now, be careful. You have to include the rest of this information. It will increase the value, but it will not increase the value dollar for dollar. I'll give you a perfect example. If you didn't have a pool and you were to put in a pool today, and you were to put in the pool you wanted, it's going to cost you somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 to do that. Sell your house next year. The appraiser is going to give you $20,000 for that pool. The appraiser doesn't care that you spent $70,000 putting in a new pool. The actual amount that it increased the value of your home is $20,000. Now, there's some improvements that aren't really improvements. like a new AC system. Well, yeah, that helps. And yeah, it will increase the value, but it's more of a necessity than an upgrade. In other words, in South Florida, can you live without an AC system? No, you can't. I wouldn't. The AC system broke, you have to replace it. It's the same thing as the roof. If the roof is leaking, replace it. You can't have a house without a roof. It's a necessity. Now, will it improve the values? Yeah, it will, but not dollar for dollar. All right. Gary goes on to say, market interest is highest in the first 30 days. That's your window of opportunity. As listings become stale, market psychology reduces the sellable price. Please write it down. Price reductions become necessary to attract buyer attention. And finally, properties priced above the market end up selling for less than they could have if their original price looked more attractive to buyers. All right, take yourself off mute, raise your hand, talk to me. Questions, comments, thoughts? I'm going to hit stop record first.